long story short, a friend of mine got paralyzed between our freshman and sophomore years. And I went and saw him in the hospital and saw the therapist working with him and thought, this isn't what I want to do.
That was Tim Terrio from TERRIO Physical Therapy. Tim Terrio is the founder and president of TERRIO Physical Therapy and Fitness Incorporated. Through its inception of 1998, TERRIO Therapy has grown from one location with one employee to 14 locations and over 240 employees, with plans to continue of growth and diversification. As a physical therapist, certified athletic trainer, and certified strength coach with over 25 years, Tim has earned a reputation for solving complex problems with innovative solutions. An advocate of lifetime learning, Terrio has earned 4 college degrees, including a doctorate in physical therapy and a master's degree in physical education with an athletic training emphasis. Tim's passion for helping others is reflected in founding the 2 nonprofits, the League of Dreams Incorporated and Health Through Wholeness Incorporated. League of Dreams is a nonprofit recreational sports league for children with all levels of disabilities. Originally started in 2007, the league now has over 300 athletes participating in each sports season. Health Through Wholeness is a nonprofit to provide leadership to improve the mental, physical, emotional, and spiritual well of the community. A serial entrepreneur, Tim recently founded Integrate 3P, Passion, Purpose, and Endless Possibilities with Amy Adams to help recruit and retain professionals in Bakersfield. Tim is a proud father of 3 children, Nicholas, fireman in Montana, with his wife Sydney, Brooke, accountant in Phoenix with her husband Corbin and new grandson Carter, and Luke, construction management. Tim loves to travel, including frequent visits to see his family growing. In today's show, we discuss Tim's entrepreneurship spirit and passion. And later in the show, we talk about Tim founding 2 nonprofits, the League of Dreams Incorporated and Health Through Wholeness Incorporated.
Welcome back to the Our 2 Cents podcast, the show where your local professionals sit down with an array of guests to hear their story and impart some wisdom for both business and life-improving skills. This is your place to hear business and community leaders discuss relevant topics that matter to you.
And welcome to the show today. My name is Troy Burton. I'll be your host today of Our 2 Cents podcast. Before we get into today's episode, I encourage our listeners to follow us on our new social media platform, which is Twitter. We're also on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. We are happy to have a guest here. I want to say a Bakersfield native, but he has a history of leaving and coming back, but he's been here quite a while. He's a staple in the community. It's going to be a fantastic guest. And if you don't know, Our 2 Cents is really built on entrepreneurship, and this gentleman does not lack anything when it comes to that. So based on that, I want to introduce Tim Terrio, president of TERRIO Physical Therapy and Fitness Incorporated and TERRIO LiveWell LLC. Tim, welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
I did a little research on you, and I found that there's a lot of information out there about you because you're a mover and a shaker. I read articles. There's something out there called 25 Things About Tim Terrio on the internet, which is
that was a while ago.
Really educational for me, and I'm sure we'll talk about a few of those things, but it really helped me put together a show. But Tim, obviously you are the president of TERRIO Therapy. You and I met. Well, you just told me today's your 25-year anniversary for TERRIO Physical Therapy, correct?
That is correct.
That's a milestone.
And
Congratulations.
things have changed a little bit over the 25 years.
You had a handful of employees, I'd say 4 or 5 when I met you on Olive Drive, your first operation.
Right.
I believe you have 14 locations or 18. How many?
14 now.
14.
Yeah, and we're at 240 employees now.
Wow. Now, I know, obviously, you oversee it, but the day-to-day operations, you got a team behind you. Have you passed on a lot of the responsibilities to your team out there?
Yeah, a majority of them. Actually, I hired Ken Berman as our CEO about 10 years ago, and he brought in that stability that we needed, the infrastructure. I ran it as an entrepreneur, so as a lot of entrepreneurs, I thought I could just outgrow our problems. And eventually it's like, hey, we need a little infrastructure to make this thing run smoothly. So he's done a fantastic job and freed me up to do all my other projects that I get involved in.
I completely understand. So let's take us back in time. How did you get into the therapy business and how did you start?
Well, actually, I'm a native of Montana.
Okay.
So I grew up there, went to Montana State, thought about doing PT. At that time, actually, long story short, a friend of mine got paralyzed between our freshman and sophomore years. And I went and saw him in the hospital and saw the therapist working with him and thought, this isn't what I want to do. So I switched and became an athletic training major.
Okay.
Started working for them. Then in my junior year, I started working for the Dodgers in the minor league system. So I worked 2 years in Great Falls, Montana with the rookie club. And then they said, hey, next year we're either going to send you to Vero Beach, Florida or Bakersfield, California. At the time I was living in Indiana getting my master's degree. So either California or Florida sounded much better.
Okay.
They dropped me off here in 1989 with the Bakersfield Dodgers. Trivia question, that was the last time Bakersfield won the championship.
Yep. I read
We had
that.
a pretty loaded team with Eric Karras, Jose Offerman, Raul Mondesi. We had a great team back then. After that year, I decided this isn't what I want to do for a living because the schedule is just brutal in professional baseball. So looping back through, I decided I'd go back and go to PT school. So I went to therapy school, graduated in 92, moved back here in 93, and been here ever since. So that's how I ended up here and ended up a therapist. Worked around with a couple companies, and then in 98 decided I was going to take a shot on my own. So originally I was the only employee when we first opened, and then hired a handful of people. Saturday night we had a party for our 25th anniversary, and actually had the first physical therapist I ever hired 25 years ago. Todd Dickman came back to town for that event. So it was good seeing him.
Very cool.
And I still had, when we did the event, we have 8 employees that have been with me over 20 years.
Congratulations.
Yeah. It's a good core team.
That's not easy. So what made you think that you can go out on your own and start a PT business? And I read an article, I think Bakersfield, California, some time ago that, some of the people that you seeked probably for advice said, hey, there's no room for other PTs in Bakersfield. We're kind of saturated. What made you think, obviously you had relationships somewhere with providers, hospitals, whatever the case is, surgeons. But what drove Tim to put all the negative press, if you will, saying it's really not a good fit, and you went ahead and did it anyway? What made you do that?
Well, I'd worked for a big corporation. It was called NovaCare at the time, that had bought a couple physical therapy clinics. So I had done the big corporation thing and didn't like that because I'm an idea guy. So when I couldn't get my ideas out there, I thought, this isn't the place for me. Then I went and worked for a local company, thinking maybe a local company would be better, and just saw politics on a different level. So my kind of motto of life is there's got to be a better way. So I thought there's got to be a better way to do this. So I thought, okay, let's give it a shot. And originally I thought, I was 32 when we started. Well, at least if we screw this up, I have time to recover,
right,
and go back and get a job and, plan B it. It didn't fail. It took off really good. I actually put together an advisory board, which is, I think, a great idea for anybody that wants to go out on their own.
Completely agree. Got
a banker, Holly Culhane with PAS Associates, came in and helped me, and just put together like 4 or 5 business people and said, hey, how do we do this the right way? From the get-go, Holly did our employee handbooks. We had all that in place. And then we just started growing and developing. One of my first contacts in town was Dr. Tivnon, and he was a big sports guy. Sure. He's retired now, enjoying the coast. He was a big sports guy, so he was kind of enthralled with my stories of baseball and having worked collegiate football and all that stuff. So we hit it off right away, purely sports. So in 94 or 5, he called and asked me if I wanted to be the BC physical therapy connection. And I said, yeah. And he said, what does it entail? He said, well, there's no pay. I said, perfect.
Another one of those.
I already not making any money. So what the heck? So I got involved with them all those years ago. I've been their physical therapy consultant since then. So that just built our relationship, and I got to meet Dr. Baker up there and just started meeting doctors. And then when I went to go out in 98, just went around and said, hey, I'm on my own now, going to try this. And it just started to grow. We were real careful at the beginning not to step on any toes. And then I looked at, well, where would we do it? I took a map of Bakersfield. Back, for those of you who don't know, we used to use maps, actual paper maps. So I took a map of Bakersfield and put all the physical therapy clinics on it, and quickly noticed a pattern that 80% of the clinics in Bakersfield were in a 1-mile radius of downtown. And I thought, well, that's interesting. There's nobody out in these peripheral areas.
More or less around the hospitals.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I think it's all part of, if you're going to have one location, your thought is, I want to be central so everybody can come to me. But what they did was they all coagulated right in the same center of town.
Yeah.
So I looked, there was nobody, 25 years ago, there's nobody in the Northwest Bakersfield. There's nobody in the Southwest. And I thought, well, let's go out where nobody is,
Which is interesting because it's not really an inpatient practice. I mean, people are usually commuting from their homes, not necessarily the hospital.
And that was my thought early on was, if you got to come, back then it was standard that people come 3 times a week. So if you got to go 3 times a week and you got to drive all the way to downtown, it's a hindrance. So we opened our first one on Olive Drive, and then in 2000, we'd filled that clinic. So I talked to my accountant and some advisors and said, okay, so what's next? And every one of them to the person said, keep one location and grow it.
Keep it simple.
I did the opposite and got a second location.
Yep.
Because my thought was there were still some other providers that were bigger than I was. And if I made too much noise, I had the fear that I could be surrounded. Right. So I thought it'd be much harder if they try to surround 2 clinics. So the second one was actually right over here in the marketplace, was our second location. And that one, I had it probably 4 months, and then I got a call from Gem Care, now Dignity Health. They were saying, hey, we're going to try to pare down our provider network. So we're cutting down to 2 orthopedic surgeons that are going to do all of our work, and we want to cut down to 2 physical therapists to do all of our work. And we thought we'd go with the 2 biggest at the time in town, but one of the doctors they picked was Tivnon.
Good for you.
Tivnon said,
good for you.
Here's the guy that I want on the panel.
Yep.
So I went in and met with them. They were like, we don't even know who you are. They said, it's too bad you don't have 2 locations because we could look at you. I said, well, I do have 2 locations. So we started negotiating, talking about it. I was just talking about my philosophies of therapy. And then within probably June, July, I get a call from Bob Severs, who used to run Gem Care. He said, hey, is there any way you could do all of it? And I thought, yeah, sure. Why not? Let me see the numbers. So when I got the numbers, I thought.
So sole provider now.
Yeah. Exclusive provider. In order to do it, I needed a 3rd location, just volume-wise, I figured. So we opened another clinic up on Oswell. Again, went way out to the other side of town and got that contract, and I've had it ever since. So we've had it since 2000. Been a great relationship, managed through Dignity Health buying out. That got to 3 and then realized why most physical therapists stop at 3 or 2. It's because your span of control starts to get real shaky. Especially when I was the top provider of therapy at the time too, and trying to run a business.
So you were doing both sides of it.
So those were some long days, lots of not only physical, but more mental and just energy drain.
And I don't know you well enough to say which one you like more, but most people that are in the medical profession love, practicing medicine, if you will, and not necessarily administration and all the issues that come with that.
Yeah, and that was definitely me so I niched out the sports therapy thing. With my background. And then we had 2 orthopedic clinics. I thought, okay, there's got to be a different way to do this. So in 2005, we had grown to 5 locations. And I was thinking, oh my gosh, we got to come up with some way that
we're still in Bakersfield city limits?
All still in Bakersfield. And then I got invited to join a group called YPO, Young Presidents Organization. Joined that in 2005 with just some amazing local businessmen. Then listening to them, I changed my philosophy and decided instead of running a physical therapy company, I want to run a great company that does physical therapy. And it sounds like a little easy switch, but it actually changed my whole mentality. Listening to these big businessmen and how they approach scaling and how they approach
So what
business.
That means to me, Tim, is instead of working in the business, now you want to work on the business.
Correct. So how do I continue to grow? And in that whole thing, then again, Tivnon popped back up again because Memorial Hospital didn't have enough physical therapists. So I got a call from the COO there and said, hey, I need to talk to you about physical therapists.
Was that Ken Keller? Or
it was CEO? Bruce Peters at the time.
Okay, Bruce
was the COO. I said, what do you want to talk about? And he said, well, we don't have enough therapists. All the orthopedic surgeons are mad that their patients aren't getting up on a regular basis.
Sure.
And rumor has it you can help solve this. So I said, okay. What do you want? And he said, we just want a therapist to come up on the ortho floor and get the total hips and knees out of bed twice a day. Yeah, no problem. Figured that out. Within about 2 weeks, they said, okay, we want you to do the whole ortho floor. I was like, okay. You got to find some more therapists. Within about a month of that, I get called into, Joanna Piercy's our director of rehab at Memorial. So she's been with us since 2005. So we get called into a meeting with Bruce again, and he puts this letter out and says, you've created a problem. I was like, I thought I solved a problem. He goes, no, you created a problem. Because now all the other doctors are mad that ortho gets all the good therapy and their patients don't. So when I'd hired Joanna, I said, look, she was working at a rehab hospital. I said, all I need you to do is just run the ortho floor. Have 2 therapists with you and just handle the floor.
Simple.
Yeah, until we got to that meeting.
Right.
I said, well, the answer's pretty easy, Bruce. Just let us take over the whole contract with the hospital.
Sure.
I thought Joanna was going to fall out of her chair.
We'll turnkey this whole thing.
So once I got her to understand the vision, then we started hiring OTs and speech therapists, and we started infilling what they needed. And again, it's been since 2005, we've been running that program. After that, it was like other opportunities came. The OT we hired to be at Memorial was Wendy Warner. So she got there and called me within a week and said, hey, do you know there's a pediatric therapy center here that's mothballed? I said, no, I don't know anything about pediatric therapy other than what I forgot from PT school.
Yeah.
It's not what I do. So she said, well, that's what my specialty is. Can we open it? I don't know. Let me go talk to John Van Boning and Bruce. And they said, absolutely not, unless you want to open it under a Terrio and make it a Terrio facility, not a Memorial facility.
Right.
I said, okay, let's do it. So we started down that path, got a small peds clinic because we found out that there was no pediatric therapy in Bakersfield at that time. People were having to drive to LA or Fresno to get their therapy for their kids. So it just seemed like a no-brainer to get it rolling. Before, right as we were opening that, Wendy came to me again and said, hey, the school districts don't have enough OTs, the schools.
Yes.
So we could start signing contracts with school districts and put OTs out at the schools. I said, all right, as long as you run it all, I'll figure out the business side of it. You get the people and we'll make it work. So ever since then, we've had multiple school districts we provide OTs for. Just seemed after that, I was getting approached all the time about, hey, what about this problem? What about this?
Snowballing.
Could you do this?
It's getting bigger and bigger. Yeah.
As any good entrepreneur, you need to learn to say no more than I did when we start, because you start saying yes to everything. And then it just really starts ballooning and growing. Ever since then, it's been like, okay, now what's next?
What has been your hardest hurdle to get over with this huge expansion? It sounds like a quick expansion, actually.
Mm-hmm.
In 25 years, you've done a lot. My first guess is finding PTs.
That's still our number one thing. And then with pandemic and the great resignation, we lost, I think in the last 2 years, we had lost 15 therapists that either moved out of town, moved out of state, or went to try something else.
Burnout.
Yeah. So about a year ago, ever since Ken came on, I took on the role of the visionary and the idea person, and he runs all the operations. So
he's been around 10 years?
Yeah, 10 years now. I said our number one problem in the last 2 years was recruitment. So I said, well, let me take that over. I'll start doing recruiting. It's been hard. It's always hard getting professionals to come to Bakersfield because they Google, either them or their spouse Googles and reads a bunch of negative stuff, and they get about 10 articles in and go, nope, not coming.
Yep.
And then there's a weird exodus out of California.
Yes.
That we're seeing with professionals. We've lost a bunch of therapists that we'd recruited in from out of state that were like, no, we're out of here.
Your occupation, I want to say, could be wrong. You might be able to do some stuff virtually, but all of a sudden this work from home thing came along in a lot of occupations like mine, using technology, but I don't physically touch people. And I know sometimes you are needed to be with patients. So
yeah, the evidence-based medicine shows that the best physical therapy is a combination of hands-on treatments and exercise. There's a little bit of the telehealth and therapy, but it's just more advice. It's better when you get your hands on the patient and do the stretching and mobilizations and stuff you need to do.
Yeah, a system.
Ahead of time. Yeah. It doesn't really work for us, although we do have some virtual employees now that are billing and stuff like that. Yeah, there's stuff that we can farm out.
Sure.
But the hands-on stuff has to be. So now we have 7, maybe 8 physical therapists joining us in the next month from our recruitment efforts between Ken and I and our other staff too. It's just weird going to that event. We had our anniversary Saturday night, and I'm meeting people that have worked for me for 5 to 10 years that I've never met.
Yeah, I know your name, but I've never put your face.
That was the comment a lot when people walked up.
I'm sure. I mean, I don't know that I really physically know 250 people that I can just walk up to and say hello. Yeah,
so. It was neat meeting everybody, and we just decided now that our world's changing again, in that private equity has come to town in the fit therapy world. There's 2 large private equity groups that have come into town. They both approached us about, hey, would you sell? And once I started looking into it, I thought, no, I'm not interested in selling. But a strange thing happened when that went down, and that was we were the Goliath in the market before. When they came in, all of a sudden we got to assume that David role again of taking on the big corporations. And we just rallied our troops and said, look, we've been approached probably 17 to 20 times about people trying to buy us. We just said, look, I'm not interested. I'm interested in continuing to grow this and to be loyal back to the people that were loyal to me all those years, not all of a sudden throw them under some big corporate entity.
You're just a number now.
Yeah, we're going to stay the local people. And, you know, it was funny after we'd talked to a few groups, Ken was like, well, aren't you worried because now they know our playbook? And I said, yeah, but I know theirs. So now I know what they're thinking. So let's leverage that for the future of how do we know what they do and don't do and what they're really looking to do.
And then there's the human element.
Yeah.
The relationships.
Yeah, and that's the biggest part. I mean,
that's what got you in the business.
Absolutely. And that's what's
going to take you through
keeping me in the business. Hey, if we could stay local and, you know, grow at least for another 10 years or however long we're going to be around. And so now my newest project is inside Terrio is I've created a program we're calling TILT, which is Terrio Innovative Leadership Team. And that's meeting monthly with all of our new therapists to mentor them in leadership and community, not physical therapy. So we're launching that program this year and already meeting with those young therapists to help them develop their careers and lives like they want to.
Are most of your I shouldn't say young, but most of your recruits fresh right out of college?
It's mostly those.
Yep.
We get a lot of students that come to us from different colleges and do internships with us.
I was going to say, are you doing internships?
Oh, yeah. We do a lot of them. We enjoy that because we get to kind of cherry pick the best people.
Yeah, and you get to, lack of a better word, you get to influence them. A lot of times when you bring someone from the outside, maybe work for a competitor, they bring things that you maybe don't believe in or, you know, so you can mold them. That's the word I'm looking for.
Yeah, and the other thing that we have that's become a big advantage of ours is when a new PT comes out of school and they're really not sure, you know, what field they want to go into. You want to go into orthopedics?
Right.
Pediatrics, neuro, acute care in the hospital, aquatic therapy. We have all of those. So we allow our new therapists to say, look, we got all these things. What do you want? Where do you want to work? So we allow them to split their schedules and say, I'll do 2 days.
Try a little this, try a little that.
2 days in the hospital, 2 days at peds, or 3 days in ortho, 2 days in acute.
That's attractive.
So, yeah, it's a chance for them to kind of get their feet wet. Since the initial Bakersfield one, we've expanded to Tehachapi, Delano, and Fresno. So we have facilities there too. So that's kind of our new look is where else do we need to be locally?
Now, why did you reach out to those communities? Because you felt, or there's a need obviously, but most of those people are commuting to Bakersfield for services, Tehachapi, for example.
Right. Yeah. So Tehachapi, again, it was those opportunities that started coming to us. So Tehachapi was, Health South had a facility up there that they started, and then they came to me and said, hey, we're going to close this thing down. Would you be interested in taking over the lease on it? I said, well, let's go take a look at it.
What's the numbers look like?
Yeah. So we looked at it and thought, all right. I mean, it's a turnkey facility. And then the same thing happened in Delano.
Did some of those opportunities come with people as well?
Yeah.
Nice.
They both did. Delano was a guy that was retiring. He had a little clinic out there.
Okay.
Didn't have an exit plan. So approached us and said, hey, I'm interested in retiring. How do we do this? Ken was on board. I said, you and Ken go through your numbers, and then we'll come back with an offer. He had bought the building, so part of it was we'll continue to rent the building from you and pop our procedures out there. So they're all doing amazing right now, though. We have more business than we can get done with our short therapists. And the other thing that slapped us last year was COVID. We had 61 of our physical therapists test positive for COVID last year.
Oh, wow.
Which, thanks to the lovely state of California, we get to pay 2 weeks off for that.
COVID pay.
Yeah. So not only were we already short staffed, but then we lost 32 weeks of treatment, 120 weeks of treatment. It was like, okay, we got to figure this out a little better too.
Yeah, that's difficult to manage and be proactive because you're hands-on and you could do all the safety precautions you can. I mean, as you know, many practices were shut down, and it definitely not only first responders or, people on the front lines of the medical world, but people don't, as an insurance agent, I read statistics and stuff, and it amazes me how many people, maybe through paranoia, were not even filling maintenance meds and stuff. And now I'm talking to physicians that would do proactive procedures, and now, unfortunately, they're taking drastic procedures because services were prolonged too long and pushed off, and now we have what we call a tidal wave. And unfortunately, you don't want to hear this as a business owner, but we're going to be delivering double-digit healthcare increases this year because now that tidal wave's actually hitting the healthcare side. And here we go.
Yeah, we knew it was coming.
And you know. So, Tim, besides physical therapy, you got a passion for a lot of other things, community involvement. Let's just jump into this nonprofit, I believe it is, the League of Dreams. How did you come up with this, and what is it today?
So we opened our second pediatric clinic down on Easton Drive.
Yep.
Big facility. Had a bunch of extra offices that we didn't know what we were going to do with. So we put admin in there. So my office was in that building. So every day I was watching these kids come in to get therapy. And then one night I was watching some TV show, and they were talking about this baseball league for kids with disabilities. And I thought, well, that's kind of cool. So the next day I went in and asked my ped staff, I said, hey, I saw this thing, and why don't we have a recreational sports league for kids with disabilities? And they said, well, nobody started it, which is a bad thing to tell me. Well, how hard could this be? Let's go ahead and get this going, So we started the first year, we had 30 kids. My only things at the time were, I don't want anything labeled as special or challenged, or I just want it to be a sports league for kids with disabilities. So met with my PTs and OTs and said, how would we do this right? And we came up with the idea of, well, let's do tryouts, but the tryouts will actually be a functional assessment by our therapist for what level of the sport you can play. So our rookie division is...
And is this multiple sports, or is this baseball, softball?
No, it's grown into... It started just as baseball. We kind of came up with the idea for it, and then we came up with, because it was baseball, our rookie division was our kids with severe handicaps.
Right.
Moderate disabilities were broken into A and AA.
Okay.
Based on anybody under 12 and over 12. And then AAA and little majors was high functioning kids.
Got it.
We launched it, had 30 kids. Now baseball season signups are again for League of Dreams. We have over 300 kids playing.
Wow.
In the sports league.
Just here in Bakersfield?
Just here in Bakersfield.
And I think I read that you got this from thought to startup in 6 weeks.
Right. Yeah, that first, hey, why doesn't this exist?
Yeah.
To the first game was 6 weeks.
That's awesome.
So it was pretty fun. And then it just, I thought, okay, well, what else can we play? So we went from we have baseball, basketball. Those were our first two. Mm-hmm. Then we got into bowling during the summer. Started looking at the year, like what can these kids do? And from the beginning, it was supposed to be, we're going to play 6 or 8 weeks. We'll have the games on Sunday afternoon, so there's no conflict with other, the other brothers and sisters games. Just got it rolling with all that, and then we started looking at the year of, okay, well, what can we have these kids do during the summer? And we came up with bowling, and then basketball in the fall. Since then, we've added fencing, dancing, cheerleading, virtual karate. Yeah, so we've expanded. Like with COVID, we took some of the programs to virtual. So the karate started as a virtual karate academy, and those kids are still going strong. And I think some of them get together. Just keep adding sports. Jessica Matthews was the executive director for a long time. 15 years ago, we built Abilities Field, which is a 4,000 square foot rubber baseball field out at Fruitville Norris Park. So we raised the money to build that, and then NOR got a matching grant to build a fully accessible playground. But then came to us and said, well, it's a matching grant, so we needed to raise another... 80,000, whatever, 90,000. I was like, okay, no problem. Let's go raise money. It's just been one of those really cool things. We use volunteers that we call angels. So every kid's assigned an angel to help them play the sport. We modify the sport as much as we have to based on the level of function. And my kids were all angels. It's just been a blessing to them to get out there and work with these kids. And
that's really giving back. I mean, to be able to give someone an opportunity to live.
We decided from the beginning, hey, let's have the full thing. So you get your picture packet. Kids get their jerseys, hats.
It's the real deal.
Trophy at the end of the season. We have opening day ceremonies. We have, so it's like these trophy cases are filling up of kids that have never been.
I love it. You're basically taking someone that's a human and treating them like you would anyone else, even though they may have something that might maybe slow them down at certain abilities, but you're not acknowledging that. You're treating them just like anyone else.
Right. Just giving them the opportunity. And that's the byline for League of Dreams is every child should have the chance to play. So
I completely agree. Love that idea in that program. Also, maybe this is part of the physical therapy part, but what is this Healthy Through Wellness or Wholeness?
Health Through Wholeness. That was an idea we came up with. It's another nonprofit we started. Originally, the idea was to provide leadership and try to get Bakersfield healthier.
How long ago did you do that?
Seminars. It's been probably 10 years ago now that we started.
Okay.
So originally it was a bunch of doctors that I was working with. We were doing seminars, health and wellness seminars. And then a couple of docs came and said, Tim, the problem isn't lack of knowledge. People know what you're supposed to do.
Yes.
to get healthy. We need to come up with other ways of helping people get healthy. So what we wrapped in the wholeness piece is mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual wellness. So we tried to tie in all those pieces to our seminars. So now I use it as an umbrella organization where I can get involved in projects that I find interesting or that fit one of those needs. So we're still trying to build 13 tiny homes for homeless veterans. That'll be through with the CVAF, California Veterans Assistance Foundation. We'll own that and operate it. I just help them raise the money for it. Ran into COVID and planning issues and everything else. So it's been 4 years. It's still going to happen. It seems like every time we try to cross that bridge,
slowly but surely,
something else comes up.
Awesome,
So
though.
still trying to get that built this year. Then I got approached by Kern Athletic Fencing Foundation last year or 2 years ago, looking for a therapist to help them start a para-fencing program, which is wheelchair fencing. The National Fencing Organization put out that in 2028, we're going to have the Olympics in LA.
Yes.
Well, the home country for Paralympics gets more entries, or for para sports. They wanted to see how many more para fencing programs they could launch around the nation. So I don't know anything about fencing, but it sounds interesting. Let's see if we can figure this out. So I've helped them. We've had 2 years. We've done a fundraiser. We've raised enough money to get the program started. We're looking for people that are interested. It's a free program for anybody, paraplegic or have an amputation.
Yep.
There's a lot of diagnoses that fit in that category.
Sure.
We have one guy that's looking really promising to maybe be able to make the Paralympics teams. Okay. Lost his arm and leg in an accident, motorcycle accident. He was a boxer before, so he has the eye-hand coordination.
Got it.
So he's gotten involved. We've been training him. And then I can put my therapist hat back on and be like, okay, let me do an evaluation of what issues you're having in the chair. Give them some exercises and stuff to fully get that through. We found out that the biggest parafencing program in America is only 5 people. So our goal is to be the biggest parafencing program. So 4 or 5 more people, we're the biggest in the nation. So
that's okay.
Yeah, that'll be some more earmark stuff.
Absolutely.
What else am I doing? Oh, also under that, right now I'm in the process of planning 2 nonprofit wellness centers.
Okay.
One for veterans and one that's fully accessible to people in wheelchairs and with amputations. Have a therapy component, a workout component, a recreational component, a mental health component, and then probably social services too, all in a one-stop shop so we can help introduce people back. Doing my research on it, it's pretty interesting that when you get injured, whether it's a spinal cord injury or an amputation, it's a life-changing event, right? So now you got to figure out how to modify life. Well, same thing when I talk to the veterans, right? So I got a steering committee for each of those. So I have people that are in wheelchairs and with amputations telling me what they need. Because I tell them, look, I don't know what it's like. So you tell me what you need, what you'd like, what can we include? And the same thing with the veterans. My dad was a vet. My grandpa was a vet.
I was going there because I'm thinking, okay, I'm hearing vet, which is awesome.
Right. It's just family lineage.
I figured there was some family in that.
So those 2. And then my girlfriend's dad was killed in Vietnam when she was young.
Okay.
And then her grandpa was at Pearl Harbor. So my grandpa was at Battle of the Bulge and her grandpa was at Pearl Harbor. So somehow they made it through 2 of the biggest battles in the wars. So it's always been a soft spot for me. And
definitely a need out there for that.
Yeah, they're just, as you start digging into it, which is what I do. When I have an idea, I just start asking questions and start doing my due diligence of, is there really a need? What's the best way to address it?
Sure.
And talk to people who've been there and know what it's like. And it's interesting talking to vets that when they come out, their whole world's been stripped away, right?
Yes.
For how many years they were told when to sleep, when to eat, when to exercise. That became their friends. That became, who they were.
It's a whole different life.
Relationships, everything was around that. And all of a sudden you get thrown back into civilization. It's like, wait a minute, where do I go? What do I do?
Nothing's normal now.
Yeah. And then you get into, you hear a lot out there about, BC's got a great program and all these different programs, but we just thought if there was a hub where people could come, a one-stop shop where they could address any physical therapy needs they have, any of their health and wellness needs, mental health needs, social impact. How do you get back into the world? And then mix in some business and life or business coaching and potentially even voc rehab of retraining them into a different career. Yeah. Including entrepreneurship. I mean, I'll try to find somebody who can teach that part. But.
I'm sure you may have already said it If not, you probably were going to, but I want to stop here and say, you've done a lot and you're giving back a ton. And I see nothing but passion in Tim Terrio. And you'll take an idea or a thought, do a little research, and you move the needle every single time it appears to be. And I got to believe that you have a strong influence around you. You have a team of people that believe like you do, that have the entrepreneur spirit like you, to take this from zero to finish. Just like you mentioned, we got to match funds for the NOR field. We need 90,000. You said, no problem. I know the people that can get that done. Right. It's not, I'm giving you a ton of credit, and maybe most of the credit, but it's obviously the network around you is really, it's really how these things get accomplished.
Yeah. I think one of the things I learned early on from talking to other business people is when I look at a new project, I don't always look at how to do it, but I look for the who.
Yeah.
Like, who do I know?
You don't have to know everything.
Yeah, exactly. And
staff your weaknesses, right?
Yeah, exactly. I don't want to run around and figure
out
how to
do things. You hired Ken to run the show, and
exactly.
Got it.
You go, you do your thing. And so there's
that's wisdom, by the way.
Yeah. It's one of those things, the earlier you learn in business, that you see the failure rates of business.
Yep.
New business is just astronomical. And I think it's people get caught in that founder's trap, right? You get it going and you start working so hard that you don't back out of it and get a better view, an outside view. And then you got to take that time to meet with business people and meet with other people that can, and just glean information from them. And it doesn't always have to be like YPO cracks me up because there's a bunch of top business people in town. But we had presentations, we had, speakers come in, but I learned more traveling with those guys where we're just having conversations. And it's like, oh man. So I think if there's one thing that I have, it's this ability to connect. So I can connect people and ideas. So I ask a lot of questions. I'm always interested in hearing people's point of view. And I'll park it away somewhere. And then eventually it pops up where somebody will say, hey, so-and-so is looking for this. And be like, oh, somebody else was talking about that.
Yep.
And then you start connecting those dots. And then just people now, I've been, hanging out with a lot of unbelievable people. Now I know when somebody's like, well, a good example is one of our new physical therapists that come into town. He said, hey, he's moving from Tennessee. And I said, what are you into? And he's like, music. And I said, okay, I know a lot of music people in town. Mm-hmm. What kind of music? And he's like, ideally like percussions. I like to teach and coach percussion. I said, okay, let me put some feelers out. One of my good friends is Amy Adams from good old American Idol 3, I think, or whatever it was. So I just said, hey, Amy, if you ever hear anybody, I got a new therapist who's interested in maybe coaching band or percussion. And less than a week later, she came back and said, hey, Liberty High School is looking for somebody to take over and coach their percussion.
Perfect.
All right, here's this guy's name. Connect him. The more that network, and I think networking in business kind of gets convoluted in going to these events. Networking to me is like getting to know people. Like
personalized.
Yeah. The more I can understand about what's driving somebody, which is actually how I hired Ken the first time. I was the chairman of the Chamber of Commerce back then, and he had graduated from FC with his master's and had called or emailed Debbie Moreno, who was the CEO at the time, and said, hey, I want to move back to Bakersfield. What are the growing companies that I could talk to? And she threw out TERRIO Therapy. So when I met with Ken the first time, I said, I'll meet with you, but I'm not hiring for that. Let me meet with you because I know a lot of people.
Yeah, I know people.
And let me put together the next time somebody says, hey, do you know a young exec? Sure. But in the course of that meeting, as he was talking about stuff, he was like, well, I think this is what I could do for you. Because the one thing a lot of people don't know Ken, but if you don't know, he's an amazing statistician.
Yeah.
Like he loves numbers.
He can have all that he wants.
He's the yin to my yang. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like perfect. You do numbers.
Yep.
So I said, I can't see it though. I don't know what you do for me. And he goes, well, let me put together a project for you. So the next week he brings in this project and he's overlaid demographics on zip codes of where we should have clinics based on our successful clinics. All right. I don't know what I'm going to do with you, but
I like what you're showing.
Yeah, exactly. You just,
I know that's going to come in handy somewhere.
Yeah, exactly. Somewhere down the road, this is going to be a good thing to have. That's when he first came to work for us. He actually worked for me about a year and a half, and then I was opening my mouth too much at the chamber about what an amazing kid, how sharp, how smart he was, and he got stolen away.
He's going to say everyone wanted him now.
And I was like, thanks, Cheryl. So he went to work for Goodwill Industries with Cheryl Chalupa, and she did an amazing job of training him, and he moved up to the COO level. And I tried a couple business managers, and just it just didn't click with what I wanted. So I also am an avid lifelong learner, so I read all the time. So I read this book called Traction, and it was talking about successful companies have a two-headed monster. There's the visionary idea person, and then there's the ops person who controls the idea person. Mm-hmm. So I approached Ken again. I said, hey, I don't care what we call your role.
Right.
This is what I want you to do. So as we discussed it, he said, well, it would be CEO then if you want me to have financial and operations. And I said, okay, you be the CEO. Closed down my office, gave him my office. I moved out.
Yep. Because you have my office.
Yeah.
I'll work it on my car, my house.
I'll move wherever.
My cell phone.
Yeah. Just give me the freedom to be me. And I also did it because I didn't want that mom and dad thing, right? Like, go talk to Ken. They didn't like Ken's answer and come in my office and go
two doors down. Yeah.
Yeah. So I said, I'm going to cut that off and let him have full responsibility.
Glad you saw that.
So we still meet weekly and review everything. A lot of my friends thought I was crazy 10 years ago to relinquish the reins of the kingdom. I said, hey, my goal is freedom and let me be the 20,000 foot view guy and get involved in projects I find interesting.
Well, Tim, you're a smart guy, and if things are not really aligned or correct towards your vision, it's going to show up pretty quick. So obviously Ken's done a great job for you, or you would have already recognized that. Right. Another thing I've noticed that you do very well is you balance life and business very well. You have 3 kids. You're very involved. I think you have a few grandkids, couple?
Just one. Corbin and
Brooke.
Little Carter, 10 months old.
And I know I don't like to be in the limelight, but I know Corbin Burns personally. I used to play a little golf with him out at Stockdale with his mom and dad and grandfather. And I'm not a huge baseball fan, and don't hold that against me, but my buddy Kyle, which is a co-host, is. And Corbin plays for the Milwaukee Brewers. See, I got to pull this out of the hat.
Nice.
And he got the Cy Young Award in 2021.
Right. That was a great
That's got to make you proud. Bakersfield native boy. What do you go, Liberty?
He was Centennial.
Yeah. And, we hear the Derek Carrs and the Joey Porters, and Corbin is not getting the recognition he needs. Maybe he don't want it, which is fine. But how's it feel to your son-in-law being...
It's interesting in that it's back to baseball. Right? Like all these years later, I was in the professional
Which is what kind of brought you here.
Right. So that's how I came here. And now seeing him go through it, it's like...
I hope your daughter likes baseball. I'm sure she does.
I think she likes watching Corbin.
Well, sure.
I don't think the rest of it... But yeah, they were actually boyfriend, girlfriend in like 5th grade.
Yeah, wow. I knew they were...
Yeah, so they were...
I didn't know that far back. Wow.
Yeah, so that's when they first together, and they were competing all the time in school.
Okay.
I think the thing that I'm most impressed with Corbin is how he handles it all. I mean, he likes to be at home with Brooke and Carter. He doesn't go out doing all the party and stuff and all that stuff.
Right.
He just somehow is able to balance that star status with life. So, and whenever he's with family, it's like, no, I'm with my family. I'm not signing anything right now.
Just
I'm
a
not
humble kid from Bakersfield.
Yeah, just a good kid and just a great person. I think it's one of those that you always hope for your kids that they'll find the right mate. And she and Corbin reconnected. He went to Mount St. Mary's, and Brookie went down to USD. So they didn't really have any contact. Mostly through high school, she went to Garces. He was at Centennial, and then all of a sudden, like right after college, they reconnected when he was in the minor leagues, and one thing led to another, and now gave me my first grandson, which is awesome.
Now you're grandpa.
Yeah, so that's all incredible. My oldest son Nick is married, lives in Montana.
Yeah,
he's a fireman. His wife's a nurse.
Nice.
They've got a great life. And then my youngest one graduated last year from Cal Poly with a construction management
St. Louis.
Yep. So he was going to go to San Diego, but then through a fluke, he went to work for McCarthy Construction.
Okay.
They said, hey, we have a job opening in Phoenix if you'd be interested. Well, Corbin and Brooke there are 5 months out of the year. So he took that one so he can be around his sister and brother-in-law. He's trying to golf, but Corbin's a really good golfer.
Oh, yeah, I played with him too.
So it's like my son's, he's like, I'm getting better. But when you're playing with people at that level, it's unbelievable.
Yeah, no, he can hit the ball.
Yeah, and it's been fun. We got to go to the last 2 All-Star games and be treated like royalty. You know, you get to stay in the hotel with the family and all the players, and it's just such a cool thing to see in his success. And then, but more than anything, that he still stays humble. And yeah, I don't know why he doesn't get more accolades around town, but
he's a humble. He's his roots. He was brought up very well, and right. I'm sure he appreciates everything he has.
Yeah, and he's not a big talker. He doesn't.
Yeah.
So when people invite him to come back and say, "Hey, will you come back and give a keynote?" He's like, "Yeah, no,
rather not."
I might show up and answer some questions, but I'm not standing up.
Yeah, I'll donate something, and you could raffle it off.
Exactly.
Well, Tim, this is the time that we do a little bit of something special for our guest, and we call it rapid fire questions. And so you don't know what these are, so I'm going to put you on the spot. What is a quote that you live by?
Probably my favorite one is, "Choice is not chance, determine destiny."
Yeah, I read a lot of things, a few different phrases and quotes that you threw out there, and they all resonated very well with me. If you could turn back time and talk to your 18-year-old self, what would you tell him?
I would tell him, you have no idea what's going to happen in the future.
Yeah.
18-year-old me I graduated at 17, didn't really know for sure what I wanted to do. Decided to give college a try, even though my college counselor, or my high school counselor, and my parents said college isn't for everybody. I'm the second child, so I have a second child chip on my shoulder. So I was like, okay, well, now I'm going to go.
Yeah.
Because I'm going to prove to you that I can do it. But there's no way that me at 18 could understand the life that I was going to live and the people I get to hang out with. And I'm hanging out with people and flying on private jets. Theirs, obviously, because mine's in the shop most of the time. Mine's a model.
Yeah, it's in your office.
It's much better to have friends with a plane than have it yourself.
I get it.
But just the places I've been able to travel and the people I've gotten to meet would have never been in the wheelhouse of 18-year-old me. Probably I came from a working class family, and that's what we knew, right?
Right.
It's kind of like Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
Yes,
my dad was
exactly.
Hey, go out and get a job. And hopefully there's one with a pension or
work
retirement.
hard your whole life and you'll be set.
Right.
Yep.
And now it's like, okay, that's not right.
Right.
So I've become more like the rich dad with my kids of, don't go get a job. Go start something. Go
follow your dream.
Something. Yeah. Follow your dream. Follow what you love to do.
Right.
So that's been a lot of fun, just teaching them and looking at that diversity of those two things. Interestingly enough, my dad is just turned 82 last November, still working 5 days a week. So I finally was like, Dad, when are you going to retire? And he said, well, I've got too much debt. And
yeah.
So we came so talking to him, I said, well, how do we fix it? Because I immediately go to solving problems. So last week I purchased his house, which eliminated all of his debts. And now he's going to retire.
Good.
So to celebrate, I'm taking him on a cruise next week to the Caribbean.
That's
his
awesome.
First cruise of his life.
Oh, that's nice.
So yeah, so it's just like, I think that's the cool part of success is when you can give back to others, especially those that have given to me over the years.
He has contributed, and he also was a vet, and now it's time to relax, enjoy
exactly.
Yeah, and live your life. You mentioned a word a minute ago when you're talking to your kids about, don't get a job and just work your whole life away and hope it's going to be good enough to retire. I mean, and that is a model out there, but obviously entrepreneurship is about taking risk. Mm-hmm. And you took a lot. And there's something that I say in every podcast I do about entrepreneurship, and there's something that I see in every person, and it's passion. Mm-hmm. And obviously you don't lack that. And, you push that passion across the table. It's contagious. Other people get that passion. Right. So like when you believe in a new idea and you bring a committee in and say, hey, what do you guys think about this? Right. They feed off of your energy. And this is why you're building such a network, because everyone wants to make a difference in this world.
Right.
And you are a great leader when it comes to that. Last thing I want to ask you is if you could be remembered for one thing, what would it be?
I would think it'd be what you just said.
Yeah.
Helping people. But more than that, it's like that I was a problem solver and was able to create and give back. So using that creativity to not only just in my field of business, but helping other people secure their dreams. I said I was I'm one of 4 kids. I'm the only one that graduated college in my family.
Right.
because that wasn't what we were told to do. Right. So it was like, so I really did a lot of analysis of that when I hired Ken. Was how did our lives diverge so much, my brothers and sister and I? And it's that getting out of that box. You know, we grew up in Helena, Montana, and that's all we knew. Like we knew our little neighborhood. And, but all of a sudden I go to college and I'm meeting athletes from all over, and then I get involved in baseball and I'm meeting players from around the world. And it's just such an eye-opening experience. It's why I love to travel. I think people need to get out, not only out in their circuits, but go out and travel and meet people and see what else is out there and just absorb it. Take it in. Don't pass judgment on it, just because you're going to learn something new everywhere you go. Right.
So. There's a couple things I want to share on this list that I found online of 25 things about Tim Terrio I thought was really cool. You arrived in Bakersfield with a duffel bag full of clothes and your possessions, and you still have that duffel bag in your office today as a consistent reminder of where you came from. So really, you came here really with nothing and just following the Dodgers.
Yeah, that literally became true because whatever else I did have that I left at my parents' house was destroyed in a flood. So all I had was the stuff in that one duffel bag was my whole
cool.
life. So.
And then your first house in Bakersfield was the clubhouse at Sam Lynn Ballpark, and you lived there for 3 months, or for a couple months.
That was against the rules, but it was a cheaper rent than...
We can say it now, though.
Nobody's around. They come back and go, what?
Exactly. Well, Tim Terrio, thank you for what you give back to the community, not only in the medical world of PT, but your visionary dream of nonprofits, making a difference, helping the community. You are a staple of Bakersfield, and we appreciate you coming on the show today.
Absolutely.
We have Tim Terrio, president of TERRIO Physical Therapy and Fitness, and TERRIO LiveWell. Thanks, Tim.
Absolutely. Thank you.
The show has been brought to you by the Law Office of Kyle Jones, Troy Burton with the Lynn Company, CPA John Duffield, Scott Hansen Real Estate Lender, broker and investor, Dave Plivlich, President and CEO of the Marcom Group and MarcomBranding.com, and Amanda DiGiacomo, President of Atlas Financial Solutions. You've been listening to the Our 2 Cents podcast. Check out the show notes for links and more information about the show. Also visit our website at our2centspodcast.com or catch us on Instagram at Our 2 Cents Podcasts. If you've enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe and share with others.